Hello and welcome to online worship here in Wollongong. And this season over January, we'll be sharing our summer series with you, which will include some music and a short reflection or sermon on the topic of heroes of the faith, which have been shared throughout the Salvation Army in Australia. We'll then conclude with another piece of music for reflection. So we look forward to sharing this summer series with you. God bless you.
I love you, Lord. Oh, your mercy never fails me. In all my days, I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire in darkest night. You are close like no other. I've known you as a father. I've known you as a friend. And I have lived in the goodness of God. For all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God.
Have you ever tried to assemble a piece of flat pack furniture, without using the instructions? Maybe you skipped over a few steps because you knew what you were doing and ended up a little lost. Not that it ever happened to me. Or what about on a road trip, taking a few shortcuts to get to your destination quicker, ignoring the instructions and the guidance, and only kind of messing up enough to arrive just a few hours late? I recall a time in school when my class was studying the United Kingdom, and we had a large homework project to complete on the country of Wales. Now, one of my friends perhaps misinterpreted, or his parents did, and spent the whole term working on a great project about whales, but the animals that live in the ocean and not the country. They missed an important instruction that resulted in a whole lot of wasted work and effort. Life is a lot like that, isn't it? We're so often tempted to take shortcuts or perhaps trust our gut, and sometimes at the expense of what we really need most. And the Israelites, they too found themselves trusting in something that couldn't provide, and we're going to explore that today. For the next few minutes, we're going to look at Elijah, one of the great heroes of faith from the Old Testament. We first hear about Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 17. And just prior to that, in chapter 16, we meet King Ahab. King Ahab began ruling over Israel, and the Bible tells us he built a temple and an altar to the god Baal. It also says he did more to provoke the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, more than any of the other kings before him. See, under his leadership, Israel shifted their focus from worship of God to worship of Baal, a false god who they believed was responsible for fertility and for rain. And as a nation, they relied upon rain for farming for both their crops and their livestock. The Israelites were facing a drought, and they believed that Baal, the god of fertility and rain, could provide what they desperately needed, the thing they needed most in life. And they put their faith and their trust in something that ultimately couldn't deliver. Perhaps they missed that part of the instruction manual, took a wrong turn, ended up wasting a lot of time. Now back to 1 Kings chapter 17 to meet Elijah. Verse 1 tells us, "Now Elijah, who was from Tishbe in Gilead, told King Ahab, 'As surely as the Lord God of Israel lives, the God I serve, there will be no dew or rain during the next few years until I give the word.'" So the very thing that people were putting their faith and trust in could not give them what they needed most, rain. Have you ever put your trust in something in the same way? It's something to think about. At the beginning of chapter 18, we read that Elijah reappears after 3 years of drought with a message for Ahab that soon the Lord will send rain. And then we move on to one of my favorite stories from the Old Testament, the showdown on Mount Carmel. And let's read it straight from the scriptures in verse 20. "So Ahab summoned all the people of Israel and the prophets to Mount Carmel. Then Elijah stood in front of them and said, 'How much longer will you waver, hobbling between two opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, then follow him.' But the people were completely silent. Then Elijah said to them, 'I am the only prophet of the Lord who is left. But Baal has 450 prophets. Now bring 2 bulls. The prophets of Baal may choose one they wish to cut it into pieces and lay it on the wood of the altar, but without setting fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and lay it on the wood on the altar, but then not set fire to it. Then call on the name of your God. I will call on the name of the Lord, and the God who answers by setting fire to the wood is the true God.' And all the people agreed. Then Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, 'You go first, because there's many of you. Choose one of the bulls and prepare it and call on the name of your God, but do not set fire to the wood.' So they prepared one of the bulls and placed it on the altar, and then they called on the name of Baal from morning until noontime, shouting, 'O Baal, answer us.' But there was no reply of any kind. Then they danced, hobbling around the altar that they had made. About noontime, and this is the fun part, Elijah began mocking them. He said, 'You might have to shout louder,' he scoffed, 'for surely he is a god. Perhaps he is daydreaming, or he is relieving himself. Or maybe he's away on a trip, or he's asleep and needs to be awakened.' So they shouted louder, and following their normal custom, They cut themselves with knives and swords until the blood gushed out. Verse 29, they raved all afternoon until the time of the evening sacrifice, but there was no sound, no reply, and no response. Then Elijah called to the people, "Come over here," and they all crowded around him as he repaired the altar of the Lord that had been torn down. He took 12 stones, one to represent each of the tribes of Israel, and he used the stones to rebuild the altar in the name of the Lord. He then dug a trench around the altar large enough to hold about 3 gallons. He piled wood on the altar, cut the bull into pieces, and laid the pieces on the wood. Then he said, "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour the water over the offering and the wood." And after they had done this, he said, "Do the same thing again." And when they were finished, he said, "Now do it a 3rd time." So they did as he said. And the water ran around the altar and even filled the trench. Verse 36. At the usual time for offering the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet walked up to the altar and prayed, "O Lord, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, prove today that you are God in Israel and that I am your servant. Prove that I have done all of this at your command. O Lord, answer me so these people will know that you, O Lord, are God and that you have brought them back to yourself." Verse 38, immediately the fire of the Lord flashed down from heaven and burned up the young bull, the wood, the stones, and the dust. It even licked up all the water in the trench, and when the people saw it, they fell face down on the ground and cried out, "The Lord, He is God. Yes, the Lord is God." What an amazing story. But this particular verse, verse 29, really jumps out at me. It says, they raved all afternoon, speaking of the prophets of Baal, until the time of the evening sacrifice, but there was no sound, no reply, and no response. The prophets of Baal raved all afternoon, calling upon their God, but no response. They danced, they cried out, they even cut themselves, but Baal remained silent. No sound, no reply, no response. I think this mirrors our own world, right? Where people chase empty promises of fulfillment, acceptance, and belonging, only to find emptiness. We might chase lifestyle to find answers, a sense of satisfaction, but no matter how hard we work and cry out for these things, there's still no sound, no reply, and no response. Paul wrote to the people in Corinth in 1 Corinthians 12, verse 2, and he said, "You know that when you were still pagans, you were led astray and swept along in worshipping speechless idols. We too can find ourselves working hard, harming ourselves in pursuit of things that cannot truly satisfy us." I think it's amazing that the same message that Elijah challenged the Israelites on thousands of years ago is reflected in the message that Paul gave the church in Corinth, and again, is reflective of the world that we live and breathe in today. A world that requires so much for no response. But in contrast, Elijah's simple act of faith resulted in a powerful display of God's power. The fire from heaven consumed the sacrifice, proving the true God's power and faithfulness. And the drought ended, the Bible tells us, with a terrific rainstorm, showing that God alone can provide what we truly need. The story of Elijah and the prophets of Baal presents us a powerful question. How long will we waver? How long will we falter between two different opinions? Either chasing the things that give us no reply, no response, and no sound, or chasing after the God that moves. Galatians 5 reminds us of the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And these things are not found in the pursuit of worldly idols, but they come from a relationship with Jesus. Like Jesus stated in that wonderful and popular passage in John 10, that he came that we would have a rich and satisfying life, full of the fruits of the Spirit. And the key to that is not hard work and hobbling and dancing around altars. It is proximity to Jesus. It is being in relationship with him to experience all the fruits of the Spirit and the things that he provides for us. In the story of Elijah, there was an altar that required a whole lot of hard work, action and pain, with no sound, no reply, and no response. The other altar, against all odds, required faith in God, and with that, God moved. Today, let's just take a moment to think about and identify any idols, the things that we are looking for fulfillment away from God. And choose instead, even at the beginning of this year, to draw near to him, to put our faith and our trust in God, so that our life would be full of the fruits of the Spirit, of love, joy, peace, patience, and all the wonderful things that Jesus promised we would have in a rich and satisfying life.
Well, thank you for sharing in our summer series today. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord.